The first thing is give yourself permission to absorb this stuff and step a little bit out of your engineering mode and forget about the preciseness thing.
What the customer cares about in the end is, hey, I have a problem. Can you solve it? Like, don't give me features, give me solutions.
It's been really great with AI coming because I get to now return a little bit to my engineering roots and do a little coding on the side.
Hello, I'm Alex Panamarov, and welcome to the Thriving Engineering Podcast. In each episode, I talk to people from across the software development industry about AI. We're not talking about the headlines, the hype, the doom-mongering. Instead, we focus on honest conversations about how AI is actually showing up in day-to-day work. What's working, what isn't, and what others can learn from it. Today, we have Amy Mitchell. Amy, please introduce yourself and tell us about your newsletter. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me here. I'm a product manager at Dell Technologies, and like you said, I have a weekly newsletter aimed at product managers where I talk about something I learned in product management. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of AI stuff coming up lately. And I've been a product manager a long time. So when I learn something new in product management, I write about it in my newsletter. And that's actually how we met, isn't it, Alex? We met earlier this year when we had a common topic in our newsletters.
Yes, I love your newsletter. I recommended it to our listeners a few times. I think you're in the sweet spot between engineers and product managers. And this is an extremely interesting and important topic for, I think, for our listeners because, hey, the world is changing, right? AI is taking over. And as we talked before, it's no longer enough to build and deliver. Now you have to think about the product. You have to make right decisions and actually decide what to build. And that's what you're writing about, right?
Right. I discovered a new term called builder PM, and we want to step out of our lane and really understand what's going on in engineering, as well as understanding go-to-market things and sales challenges, where we truly are merging together all of these different disciplines. And it's just so interesting to get back a little bit to my engineering roots, because that was one thing we came together on. This is when I first came out of school with a CS degree, I was leading engineers after I had done coding for a few years and then moved to product management. So it's been really great with AI coming because I get to now return a little bit to my engineering roots and do a little coding on the side.
Can you tell a bit more about how you got into product management? How did it happen? What made you make the transition?
Yeah, it was, I got to tell you, it was a big struggle, but I had been leading engineering on a software product, a telecom software product. So I had a lot of the process and quality control things that goes with that territory. And I noticed the people getting promoted around me were people that had business background. And I just noticed it. And my boss came to me out of the blue and said, to get to the next level, you probably need to do something in business. Why don't you think about moving over to product management? So I had been leading the engineering team. Then I moved over. I led the product management team as a lateral move. And it was such a shock. The amount of preciseness that we focus on in engineering, like it's either black or white. And it's not like, oh, it's almost done or the deadline is next month. That's unheard of in the engineering world. But in product, it's all like, well, maybe the customer will close next month. Maybe they're going to get budget. Lots of maybes. And there's a stack of maybes. And I saw the people that were in product management that had been there for years, and they were like, oh yeah, this is how it works here. And it took a while. And I did want to tell you about some of the things I learned, because now in today's engineering and product development climate, when we have AI to help us so much, now we have to step a little bit into the product world. Just like I talked about, I got to step into some of the engineering world. Well, I feel like engineering's getting pushed into productization and worrying about renewals and
Mm-hmm.
revenue targets. So I thought I'd share some of the things that were like a big struggle for me. Maybe if I tell you and your listeners about it, maybe it'll save somebody a little bit of time.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will save more than just time. You may save lives. I can 100% relate to this shock because I experienced it as well. I moved into management 10 years ago, and yeah, as engineers, like we're not prepared for the amount of uncertainty that managers deal with. Product managers, engineering managers, any kind of managers. And I think what's happening today is the worlds collide. Product world is colliding with engineering world. QA world with everything is colliding with engineering world. Everything is getting merged together, and now we have to wear multiple hats. And as engineers, we find ourselves in the middle of this uncertainty, and we're completely unprepared. What would be the number one advice from the top of your head that you can give to engineers? How do they survive in this new world where nobody can tell them what is the right feature? Like what does customer want? Who is this customer even? What do we build next? How do we build this? Like how do they find these answers? Where they even start?
Yeah, it feels like there's just so much hitting you. And I know I almost went underwater. And luckily I had a mentor after I bumped around for a while. The first thing is give yourself permission to absorb this stuff and step a little bit out of your engineering mode and forget about the preciseness thing. The other shocking thing is the amount of off the wall requests. I'm sure you've seen this, Alex. Salespeople and customers think of the darndest things, and I remember I was getting questions like, "Well, does the CLI do this?" And I was in shock because I was like the real time programmer person thinking about inching the next 1% of performance out of the transactions per second. And it never occurred to me to think about a customer's going to change something. Or
Yeah,
I thought you change something every now and then. But these customers had users coming and going, and so they'd have to give them access control and things like that. And the other marketing people were like, "Oh yeah, I see you're a long distance carrier. Here's the kind of stuff you'll want to do, and here's the section of the CLI document that explains it, and here's the report I think you'll need." And that closed the sale. That was the most amazing thing, is the customer didn't really care about speeds and feeds. They assumed you had it, but how they touched the product was really important. So, and now CLI is coming back again. So, um, the customer touching the product is one of the things that was surprise to me coming over.
Um, yeah, as engineers, we're thinking about optimization, or we're thinking about using better tech, or using the right architecture, or we're thinking in terms of features. Even product managers are guilty, right? We're thinking in roadmaps and features, but yeah, but what the customer cares about in the end is, hey, I have a problem. Can you solve it? Like, don't give me features, give me solutions. Do you have maybe a framework, or an approach of how engineers can change their mindset and be more customer centric, like how they can put themselves in the shoes of the actual customer?
Yeah, and that's one of the things, and you're right. A lot of product managers struggle with it, along with engineering leaders that get pulled into this world. And that's really understanding the customer's problem space. And that's one of the areas where AI can help us a lot. I know I use AI a lot to say, like, well, what does a storage admin worry about daily? And so that's what it comes back to, is the problem. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And a lot of times, yes, speeds and feeds is really important, but the day-to-day usage is less about speeds and feeds and more about touching it. So that's the first one, is the problem space. Another one I wanted to talk about is a big shock to me, was around finding deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in engineering, the thing that irritated me the most was, oh, we got to have it done by the end of the month. And when I talked to customers, the customers were like, I need this feature, and it needs to be done with quality. Don't throw this stuff over the wall to me. Don't make me be the first one to find a bug. And that seemed like a huge disconnect. The product managers were telling me it's got to be done next week, and the customers were saying, don't give me any shoddy stuff. And it wasn't until I moved over to product management that I finally started figuring out what's going on with these arbitrary deadlines. And you know what it was?
Um, I think I do. I think I do. That's
Because
like
you probably are there too. Uh,
uh, I'm
there's
there all the
business
time.
drivers, right? It's the business driver. It's not that the product manager woke up one day and said, "Oh, hey, Alex, I just need it by the end of the month." That's what I feel like. You're trying to close a deal, or maybe there's a big trade show coming up where you're going to have some really important customer conversations that could lead to your next sale.
I think I have a very good analogy for this. Do you know that a raindrop can change the direction of a bullet fired? So if a bullet is fired from a gun, it can hit a raindrop and go in a completely different direction. That's how, I saw a movie recently. I don't know what it was. It's something like there was a business meeting, and the team was preparing rigorously for that business meeting. And then, like the key stakeholder, maybe a CEO or someone like that, came to a meeting, glanced at a presentation, like at a slide, said that this is complete garbage. That's not what we want, and walked away from the room. And they spent months preparing. And people watch movies like that, and they think that like some people think that it's not true, some people think that it's exaggerated, but this is how things happen, because one slide, one feature added to the product at the right time can change the whole course of a product. It's super important. And I think I saw this in one of your latest posts on the newsletter, where you talk about how builders are now in the middle of engineering, GTM, and sales. And that's exactly it. You're in the middle.
That's right. And there was, I used to work for a software company, and it had a cloud piece of software and it had an on-prem piece of software. And we wanted to, there was a new protocol for volume storage. It was disaster recovery. So any change to the volume structure of the storage is like it has tentacles in everything. You can just imagine what a massive piece of software, and you're going to change the volume structure. And so I wrote a nice PRD. I had a nice list of customers that wanted this new volume structure, and I took it and reviewed it with engineering. Is like, no, 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 way too big. We're not going to even talk about it, and just stop. But I wouldn't let go. I was one of those, you know, problem product managers that are like, I can't let this go. And because I had all these customers, I didn't know what I was going to tell the customers, and started asking, like, couldn't we do a POC or something? And, you know, even in the AI world, this wouldn't help. You got a cloud piece of software, you got on-prem. You can't just vibe code your way out of that. But I was like, hey, we've got a big show coming up. You can actually talk to the customers if you come to the show with me, and maybe we'll figure out a better way. Maybe it's not as bad. And they looked around. We had some phone calls when I went back home from Israel, and we figured out it we could probably change the volume structure, and the software was not affected so much. And we got it ready, and we went to the show. We had these great customer conversations. We validated it wasn't as bad as we all thought, and it turned out nicely. So the deadline wasn't like having it ultimately ready. The deadline was being ready for a customer conversation.
I think you touched on a very important point that product managers and product leaders have to deal with often between the that's how I feel. Please correct me if you see it differently, but I think every manager often finds themselves between the rock and the hard place. Product manager has stakeholders on one side, and you need to build relationships with stakeholders, because you can't just give them a list of features that you came up with. You need to really understand them. You need to prepare them. You need to communicate how everything is done, why you've decided to, like, you have to paint the picture. You have to tell a story. On the other side, you have engineers, and you just mentioned a situation where I'm sure you had amazing team, but sometimes engineers get defensive and they tell you no, and you hit a wall. And because I think you were lucky because you have CS background and you can argue with them. I assume in many situations, but a lot of product leaders, they don't have the arguments. Now AI helps because you can go to Perplexity, you can go to Claude, to ChatGPT, and get some arguments. But still, you have to build relationships with these engineers. You have to be empathetic. You have to understand them, and sometimes talk to them like I mean this in a good way. Talk to them like to kids, saying, "Hey, this is not scary. Let's just look at it. We don't have to do anything. You don't owe me anything. Just, don't get scared. Please help me on this," and so on. Please tell me if that
Yeah.
resonates, and where do you find the energy to build and maintain all these relationships? And what can you advise to engineers who are introverts most of the time, and building human to human relationships is usually not our strongest trait?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And relate when I was in engineering, it was like, got to get it done. And who has time to go out to lunch and get coffees and who has time to know the names of the kids of the people you're working with? And I think it hurt me. I think I probably could have gone farther in my engineering career if I hadn't been such an introvert. And I bumped around in product management for quite a while, not realizing the importance of relationships. And and this is even after when I was in engineering, I had a mentor who said, "Oh, I just treat everyone like they work for me." And I know that sounds kind of arrogant, but when somebody works for you, you're going to defend them first and then go find the story out. And you don't want your people to fail because, if your person fails, you're going to have to put them on a performance improvement program. So when people work for us, we don't want them to fail and we're going to defend them strongly. And that's kind of like an excessive ownership situation. But when you think that way, and I shouldn't have forgotten it kind of just pushes you into relationship building. And when it really struck home for me is when we had a customer outage situation. And I was so glad I had worked on the relationship with engineering once I was in product management, because it's really hard to ask somebody to do something like, "Hey, I need you to come in and work this weekend," if you didn't have that relationship and be able to apologize. "Oh, look, I know Billy's got a baseball game. I'm so sorry. But we don't have any other solutions." And it's how you can come together and work on things together. It actually turns out being faster in the end, even though I'm with you. I'd love to just sit here and look at my screen and um, just crank the workout, but we need each other. And I'm constantly reminding myself, "Oh, hey, it's been a while since I talked to Alex. I better see what's going on on the development program that we're working on together."
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that when people work for you, it might sound arrogant to some people. I think only managers know what it actually means, because it means that you have the responsibility. I think kids are a good analogy because it's a lot of responsibility. And same with the team. You want them to succeed because as a manager, again, you're product manager, project manager, engineering manager. If the team succeeds, it's their success. But if the team fails, it's your failure as a manager. If product fails, it's your failure as a product manager. And if customer, whatever product you have, if customer doesn't want to use your product anymore, then they probably failed, and they're probably not happy about this either, because now they have to go find another product, they have to find another solution. They would be better off with working with you, not, and focusing on something else.
Yeah, and also we have such virtual teams now. So now organizations are flattening out. Managers have like 20 direct reports, and we're dealing with people that have very narrow focus. So um, this sort of thinking about relationship building and the extreme ownership, um, I'm finding it hits me a lot more now on a virtual team because there's virtual teams everywhere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have an interesting question for you. You have a lot of experience in the industry, and you've seen a lot of cycles happening. This AI cycle uh, is special in a way, but everything happened before, again, in a way. Now there's a lot of talks about there will be no product managers next year, 5 years from now. Some people say there will be no engineers. Again, not Not clear when, but they're very convinced that this will happen. Some people say that there will be no jobs. There will be just CEOs, managing agents, and those will be their employees. Because clearly the worlds are colliding. We're, at the very minimum, we're learning a lot from each other, and we're stepping on each other's territory. And engineers are getting into product management. Product managers are becoming builders. Um, what we will end up with, in your opinion, how engineering teams, engineering departments will look like after this collision of worlds stops at some point, if it ever will.
Yeah, I think both product management jobs and engineering jobs are going to evolve. We're all going to learn how to work with agents and AI. But I'll take you back a couple years, maybe 5, 6. At that time, it was like, there's not going to be any on-prem software anymore. It's all going to be in the cloud. And we were all talking about everything moving to the cloud. And then we started hearing these little inklings of repatriation, people pulling stuff out of cloud because it wasn't all that you thought it is. So I think we're going to be in a hybrid world, just like it's a hybrid today of cloud and on-prem software working together. I think product managers are going to move into builder product managers, where we're going to be managing agents as well as having these very important relationships with our cross-functional teams. I think the same thing's going to happen on engineering. And there's always going to be a ton of legacy things, legacy architecture. There's going to be people improvements. So I think engineers are going to start moving over and start answering some of the why. There'll be less dependency on product managers because you can get it from AI. But I do think it's going to be a hybrid world.
Yeah, I agree. I have the same vision. It's almost like 100 years ago, people thought that there will be flying balloons, and that would be the primary way to travel, because that's what they knew at a time. So we can't even imagine this hybrid world. Also, like I remember when the cloud emerged, and everybody was talking that we won't need servers or system administrators anymore. And in a way, we don't. But hey, now we have DevOps engineers, platform engineering teams, and so on. So their job evolved, and now we need them more than ever, especially with AI and agents, if we want safe and reliable AI applications. So it is definitely going to be interesting. Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was an amazing conversation. I'm sure our listeners and viewers would enjoy. Thank you for your advice, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Alex. I had fun talking with you.
Thank you.